this meeting is being recorded, and the recording will go onto the Baines Council YouTube site. So I've been asked to say a few words about the etiquette, which is please stay muted unless you're talking. And the may I speak in the chat facility, I think Mark, you said it's slightly, sorry, may I speak may not be right, but it's using the chat facility. If you send a message, it will get picked up. And then any queries will be addressed either by response or by passed on to the speaker. This meeting, we've got to start off with a piece of, to be blunt, bureaucracy, a very short AGM, where we need to appoint chair, vice chair. So do we have any, Mark, you'll be more aware of this than I, have we had any proposals for chair?
Okay, if you want me to just take this piece then, John.
Please do.
Yeah, we've only had yourself that's put yourself forward for the chair's role again for another year. We've had no other applications for the role of chair or vice chair. We do allow nominations at the meetings, so if anyone wishes to put themselves forward, then they can do so now.
Please do.
I see no offers coming through. If that's not the case, then obviously John will be elected for another year unopposed, and will continue to take the chair for this meeting. The only other matters for this AGM are that we have tidied up the terms of references, and we did include those with the papers for this meeting. And I would ask if anyone's got any questions or comments or amendments to make to those, then please do so by writing directly to myself. And finally, as part of this item, we always do ask the chair just to give a few words about what has occurred over the last 12 months with the forum. And I know John was just keen to reference back to what happened with the forum before lockdown.
Yeah, pre-COVID. We did have a couple of Cam Valley Forum meetings which were very widely attended and by the local communities as well. One was to do with the Bath Breathe campaign, and the other was on the climate that was held in Preston, and a climate emergency Cam Valley Forum meeting held in Freshford, both of which were very heavily attended by the local community and resulted in good positive outcomes. Unfortunately, matters got brought to a halt during lockdown and just beginning to get going again. What that has shown us is what is most productive from these meetings is taking subject matters raised by any parish that happens to have a wider interest. And this is a good forum to use to bring Baines into the fold, to get discussions out on the table and interactions underway. So what that really is a cry for future possible agenda items, and to remember this as a forum as time goes by. So that's all I was going to say on the annual update. The first item on the agenda is livable neighbourhoods. Joanna Wright. Joanna, oh hi Joanna, to see
Hello.
you.
Hi, sorry, I'm here. How are you this evening?
I'm good. I hope everyone else is good. I should have done a more polite introduction. How are you all? I didn't. Thank you.
It's a bit confusing, all this new technology some days. Anyway, good to see everybody. As you know, my name is Joanna Wright. I am Joint Cabinet Member for Transport Services with Neil Butters, who's also here. Neil, do you want to say hello? You're mute.
Hi, good evening all.
As you know, the two of us have been working hard on what's called the Livable Neighbourhood policy work to look at low traffic neighbourhoods, residence parking zone and electric charging points. And we've combined this together into one policy piece of work. And we are presently in consultation. The consultation was meant to end on the 14th, but has now been extended to the 18th of July. And I have with me here two very competent officers in the form of Chris Major.
You said July.
Oh, sorry, you're October. In my fantasy, I'm in July. I'm not sure which year, not 2020. So anyway, I've got two competent officers with me in the form of Chris Major and Jessica Fox-Taylor, who are also going to give you some more information on this, and we are more than happy to take questions at the end. So I'll let Chris introduce himself and give you his full job title. Thank you.
Excellent, thanks, Jo. Hi, yeah, I'm Chris Major. I'm Assistant Director for Highways and Transport for Baines. Relatively new to this role, which combines all of the highway functions with the parking functions, the clean air zone that's coming into force in Bath in March 2021, and passenger transport services as well. I've got a presentation about livable neighbourhoods that I'm willing to share, if I can have the ability to share my screen, Mark. We can perhaps go through it. It sets out what we're trying to achieve, and then we can go and answer any questions that you may have. This was done on a webinar last week, but it's really important that as many people as possible see what we're trying to achieve. So if you did see it last week, please bear with me. It is the similar presentation. I'm just going to try and share my screen and we can go from there. Perfect. So hopefully you should all be able to see my screen now, and I'll be able to start. Excellent. So thank you. First of all, thanks for letting me do this presentation. It's really important that we look at how we can link improvements to air qualities within our towns, cities and rural areas. It's a really key issue for us. As we've not been able to hold our normal drop-in sessions to engage with people, forums like this are really important for us to be able to get the views of people and to make sure there's an awareness about our consultation as we go forward. As Jo said, the consultation has been extended to finish on the 18th of October. Please, we do ask you all to fill in as much, to get as many people as possible to fill in the consultation, because we need to hear all of your views as we go forward. So the key message for us really is that livable neighbourhoods, they're not just a traffic scheme. We're trying to give people the opportunity to address issues within their day-to-day lives, how they work through. The World Health Authority is absolutely clear that we face a public health emergency. Obesity and other non-communicable diseases are causing significant strain on our health services across the country. We currently spend over £8 billion per year dealing with the cost of physical inactivity. If we raised our levels of cycling nationally to the same level as, say, Denmark, we could save the NHS £17 billion over 20 years. We also know that 20 minutes of exercise a day can reduce the risk of developing depression by 31%, and it also increases the productivity of workers. We also know that children who are active achieve better grades, and walking and cycling to school helps children arrive ready to learn. The changes in traffic levels during the lockdown were stark for all of us to see. And as well as some of the types of benefits livable neighbourhoods bring forward, they combine to allow people to hear birds singing for the first time in some areas. People noticed the air seemed cleaner, and they were able to exercise safely. However, traffic levels, and particularly NO2 levels, are returning back to where they were previously. And this has required us to continue with the plans for the clean air zone that have been promoted previously. The livable neighbourhood strategies are promoted to help capture those benefits and embed them into the day-to-day lives for all. Reflecting this, we've proposed as part of the overall strategy, this vision as a key part of our work we're promoting. We know that air quality has a specific and measurable impact on the health and well-being of people within towns and cities, and this is particularly acute for those with conditions such as asthma, COPD, and even some evidence coming forward around COVID and the links to air quality. But we want to link places together with active travel routes for walking and cycling. We want to use the strategy to address noise, danger, air quality issues within neighbourhoods. But we want to go further than that and really create better places for people. Obviously, reducing running in residential areas, in the urban areas, is a key part of the overall strategy. It's something that's raised with us time and time again. But it's also from people from other areas, from rural areas where traffic on the way to Bristol, for example, affects neighbourhoods, to the centres of the city where some roads see significant traffic flows to avoid key pinch points. We recognise that not everybody can walk or cycle easily. In developing livable neighbourhoods, we'll give careful consideration to supporting people with disabilities, those with restricted mobility and other additional needs, and allow them to have their say and influence the design. It's really important to stress that livable neighbours do not stop vehicle access to local homes, but they can improve access for those with restricted mobility and provide safer, more pleasant places for people to get around. The approach we're taking also aligns with central government policy released in August called Gear Change, a bold vision for cycling and walking, and their policy called LTN 120, which sets out new standards for cycling infrastructure. At central government level, it's accepted and recommended that we have to make changes to the way we're travelling and to make walking and cycling the central tenets of our policy making. We're really excited about this, and despite many of the challenges it brings, such as a limited road space, the need to make sure that we support those who do not need to have a car, and the requirement to deliver both within the available resources and in a timely manner, we're really keen to see progress over the next few years to change the way people travel. The question is, how do we do this in a way that's open, transparent and inclusive? The reality is this comes down to how we can all work together and work to find solutions to the issues we're facing. I personally don't think there's ever going to be a perfect solution, particularly at the start, but the opposite approach of doing nothing is also not acceptable in light of the health crisis we are facing. As set out within the Gear Change documents, it's clear the real cost of unrestricted motoring are substantial. There are long-term impacts of the previous policies, and we're going to have to think differently to address them. And this is going to be challenging. Whilst cycling also features strongly in many of the proposals, for me, I think it's walking that provides the opportunity for change for many of us. Providing an environment that encourages walking and cycling will start to provide a different way to thinking about how we travel. So the aims of livable neighbourhoods isn't to prevent essential trips. We all need to make them on occasion. It's about making sure that people have a choice, a safe choice to travel how they want in larger numbers, to make sure that the allocation of road space reflects the priorities of all groups rather than areas and neighbourhoods being dominated by vehicles. But we know one size does not fit all, particularly in the rural areas. This leads us to being able to see neighbourhoods in a different way. Evidence suggests that as much as 15% of traffic disappears entirely when you develop livable neighbourhoods. And if we had this level of change, it would be really positive reflected locally. We also know that reductions in car use can be positive for local businesses as more and more people shop locally. A key point is that development of livable neighbourhoods does not prevent anybody using their car or anybody entering the zone to do deliveries, for example. It does, however, reduce through traffic and require changes in the way that people undertake trips. As I said before, this may not be easy, and we'll have to be open to hearing views of all of the people as we develop the plans. But the option of doing nothing is not one we can take if we want to deliver the better places we all desire. We all know we're seeing more and more traffic on the roads. If you drive regularly, the quiet periods seem to have disappeared completely. The levels of increase in vehicles has far outgrown the available space, and we've all gotten used to nipping out in the car for work, for leisure, and sometimes just because we want to drive. On top of this, we have to deal with the issue of bigger cars. The increased use of SUVs combines with the fact that cars have got, on average, approximately 20% bigger over the last 2 decades, thus each one taking up more road space when driving and also when parking. The numbers of vehicles registered, bar 2020 because of the COVID-19 impact, continues to increase. By 2022, we're likely to have over 40 million vehicles on the road network nationally. Therefore, whether or not we take action, all streets are very likely to see increased traffic as people use more and more shortcuts to avoid known delays. The only way to prevent this is to offer real choice in the way that people move, ensuring joined up walking and cycling corridors that have pleasant environments and safe infrastructure. Are we prepared to allow the numbers of vehicles on all roads to continue to increase? Is that our preferred option? This can be a difficult question to answer, and we fully recognise that some trips are vital and cannot be taken in another way. However, by removing those trips, that can also be done differently. More space is allocated to the essential trips, so everybody wins in this scenario. The question we're beginning to ask ourselves should be, is each trip I take essential? And do I want this for the future, for me, my family, and for my community? However, we mustn't lose sight that traffic levels on the main A road corridors nationally is generally flat. According to the DFT figures, we've seen less than 1% increase since 1994. Urban A roads, as we know, are better suited to higher levels of traffic as they're generally wider, but again, it doesn't mean they should be seen as a total solution to problems. Increasing strategic cycle corridors remains a key deliverable to link journeys end to end, from a livable neighbourhood to a livable neighbourhood, from home to workplace, from shops and to schools. The question obviously then becomes, where have all the extra cars gone? Many of you know that they've started to use residential roads to avoid queuing, disrupting the normal ability to travel and making all of the streets noisier, more polluted and more dangerous. This issue has been further impacted by the use of sat-nav and similar apps. People no longer need to be local to find local roads through neighbourhoods, and the impact of this can be seen on a daily basis. It's had an impact on where we all live. Things like playing in the street have disappeared for many children without a clear consultation on whether or not we all agreed it's what we wanted. Neighbours have seen less and less of each other as the parking and movement of traffic has segregated communities, and this has changed the way we communicate with each other. The changes happen slowly over time and without thinking differently, and changes in our policy, we won't get them back. But what about people? How do we make sure we hear everyone's views? Who should we listen to? For example, we regularly hear about how everybody drives, but is this really the case? Do the majority drive? Actually, it's only about half the population have a driving licence, and a significant proportion of those who don't have a licence have no choice in the matter, either being too young to drive or have a reason not to hold a licence, such as a medical condition. This is a significant portion of the population who cannot drive, but do not necessarily have their transport needs considered within the historic decision-making processes. Of those eligible for a licence, we know about 75% of the population have one, but this is much lower at the younger and older end of the age spectrum. Again, this identifies another significant proportion of the population who may benefit from a livable neighbourhoods approach. We're really keen to get people involved in the design processes who may not normally have done so, to ensure that the designs are equitable and inclusive. Cars obviously still dominate the transport choice for over 61% of journeys undertaken. But we cannot forget that a quarter of journeys are already walked, particularly in Bath, where we have a high level of walking already and the opportunity to increase further. We know cycling has a low level of usage, and hopefully that changes. We also know that there are many disabled people who can and do cycle or use mobility scooters on a regular basis, and more of them would like to if the road conditions allowed them to. Again, in Baines, we know we have a high level of car ownership, although generally car ownership increases by income band, with households at the lower quartiles of income having a significantly reduced likelihood of having access to a car. Our proposals for the updates to residents' parking schemes can help reduce the impact of commuter and students' parking. In residential areas, particularly in Bath, there's significant demand from shoppers and commuters for on-street parking. This congests local streets and reduces parking opportunities for residents. Our Livable neighbourhood consultation proposals encourages active travel and restricts non-local traffic and the demand for parking this brings, moving them to public transport, out to the park and rides and into car parks. Reclaimed space can then be used to install modal filters and better walking and cycle infrastructure. One way to further reduce car ownership, for example, is to encourage car clubs and electric car clubs, particularly where people need them. If existing residents' parking schemes and other measures already in place need to be reviewed and altered, that's also in the plan. It may be that this resolves issues without the need for a complete livable neighbourhood. Careful consideration must also be given to ensure one area does not impact on the demand for another area. The reality is that the changes in behaviour needed to achieve the climate declaration commitments are significant. Road traffic contributes approximately 29% of CO2 in Baines. We need to think about reducing mileage by about 25% per annum to reduce this and achieve the outcomes from the Climate Declaration Action Plan. With 70% of journeys less than 5k in urban areas, at least some of these can be changed easily to walking and cycling. Many people already do this for at least some of their journeys. The key is making sure that many more of those journeys are converted. This map gives an indication of 3 kilometres from Milson Street, and 42% of the journeys by car are shorter than this. We've been told for decades that the path to freedom is within a car, and very little focus has been on the impacts of this behaviour. The motor industry shows commercials of empty roads, and the reality of the situation is that we get more and more vehicles on the road, and this allows us less and less opportunity to choose other transport options safely. The motor industry, according to Deloitte, spends over £1.47 billion per annum promoting the need for more cars. To encourage people not to drive, we need them to feel that they're real joined up alternatives. The evidence from many studies suggests that the biggest barrier is segregated infrastructure, and the proposals for livable neighbourhoods starts the process of joining that strategic road infrastructure with local changes to encourage and support the use of cycling. Of course, there's been a lot of focus on urban areas. However, the principles are broadly the same for rural areas, as this is about making places better for people to move differently. The photos shown are from Laycock, a small village in Wiltshire many of you will be familiar with. This modal filter was placed on the high street outside the world famous Fox Talbot Museum for Photography. The filter does what's required by preventing traffic using the village as a rat run, and it guides the traffic outside of the centre. Access is maintained, but overall traffic levels are reduced significantly overall, particularly when combined with residents parking in this particular location. So the next steps, once the consultation is closed and if the strategies are supported, we plan to put them forward for adoption by the end of the year. We've appointed additional resource to be dedicated on the alignment and development of our sustainable transport programmes and to lead the co-design and engagement with communities, so we're able to listen to all views and collate their options. In the same way that traffic levels have increased over time, the reduction of traffic is likely to take some time for people to switch behaviours and find new ways of travelling. We suggest using experimental traffic regulation orders to allow communities to collect information to help formulate the final schemes. We also recognise that, as with any scheme, there is no perfect solution and compromise will be necessary at all times. By working together, listening to different viewpoints and understanding what may be possible, we will deliver the improvements necessary to protect people's health. Thank you. I think that's everything. So I'll stop sharing my screen now, and we're happy to take any questions you may have on the schemes.
May, your last picture there on the screen had an absolutely flat road. Well, in Bath, it's just not like that. You know, you've got a fundamental problem of the hills, and you cannot expect people to walk and cycle up and down those hills. So it makes life really difficult for you planning things ahead.
Thank you for that. I think it's a really interesting point, and one we hear regularly, as you can imagine. You're absolutely right that hills do challenge some people. But again, we're talking short journeys up hills using particularly electric bikes, which help people get up and down the hills, can change the way that people move. There is no easy solution for the geography of the city, but it is still possible for people to move without using their car over very short distances, and that's really what we're trying to achieve. You know, again, many of us will be cyclists and have been for years. The hills do become easier over time as well, and with adapted bikes that can be resolved. I don't know if Jess has any other comments on that.
E-scooters. So we're running a trial on e-scooter to feed back to the government what works and doesn't work, because there's a clear direction from the government to consider allowing electric scooters onto our streets and onto our cycle paths. And one of the questions, I've actually been in Bath doing site visits, the centre of Bath today, looking at all of the potential locations where we would put docking stations, parking bays. I think the first thing I want to say about e-scooters is that whatever we do, it will be of the utmost importance that we maintain space for pedestrians first and foremost. And that has been echoed through everything that we've done in the contract for this trial. And should this be something that the government adopts, it will always be part of what we do going forwards as well. So in the very basic, that means the city centre of Bath, for example, and wherever else we decide.
Oh dear.
We've lost you.
Is limited, is high. So, can you hear me if I turn my video off?
Much better.
Is that any better?
Yes.
Okay,
definitely.
I'll leave my video off and continue. So we will always prioritise pedestrians, and that it can extend to no parking zones for electric scooters, to thereby telling users of electric scooters that they must only end their ride and deposit an on-street scooter in a very specific designated location. It cannot be like the Bristol yellow bikes, yo bikes, where they are dumped and abandoned all over the place. That absolutely cannot be the case. But to go further and to do a little bit of crystal ball gazing, e-scooters, we very much wanted to take part in this trial because electrical assist micro mobility, i.e. e-scooters and electric bikes are very much essential to help people maintain mobility up the hills that we have around Bath and northeast Somerset. And one of the questions I put to the operator today was how they're taking forwards consideration for seated scooters, so that in terms of accessibility, as we potentially move forwards out of a trial, we are looking at things that are not just for the young, fit and active people who are happy to stand for periods of time, but we absolutely want to make sure that mobility, that ability to move around, connect with one another, be part of the community, is maintained for as many people as possible.
Thank you. Any other questions? Dave?
It's not so much a question as a comment, and I'll following on Jenny's point, really. Not only is physical geography going to be an issue in the city, I think it's going to be particularly an issue in the Cam Valley, which is characterized along its length, really, by long, steep inclines wherever you are. If you're traveling within neighborhoods, you meet them. So whilst this is a good thing, and I'm behind it, I think the practicalities will militate against its wide adoption here. because I think the physical geography won't be an issue for some people, it will be an issue for most people. And I think to say, well, we will encourage you to get around it by the increased use of electric bikes, whilst they cost somewhere upwards of 500 quid to £1,000, that is optimistic to say the least. So I'm behind it, but I think the opportunities in our area particularly are probably limited. The second thing I'll say, and then I'd shut up, is that I'd like to see a little more overt connection to the provision of public transport. Because if people within livable neighbourhoods are going to give up their cars, and whilst they're within their neighbourhood, maybe they'll cycle and walk, but if they want to go between neighbourhoods, they'll have to have public transport, won't they? And there's not much about that. And as we know now, the design and provision of public transport isn't within Bain's gifts wholly. So we need WECA on board to get this thing planned and resourced properly going forward.
So I'll just pick up on the buses issue. So as you know, the system that government has in place is a deregulated market. And that deregulation of bus services has not helped anybody particularly, and created a very unfair system. So both Neil and I are really aware of the issue, and WECA were in the midst of putting together a bus strategy as COVID-19 hit. And that's literally had to be abandoned. And as I'm sure you're all aware, the government has been bailing out both the train services and the bus services to large amounts of money to make sure that they stay in place and they will still have something fit for purpose at the end of it. I'm hoping that there will be some significant change to what that bus service looks like and how that connection is. But I think the future will not look like the bus services that there were in the past. There'll be more something like on-demand response and more sort of Uber-style bus services. So there has to be a significant change. I hear what you're saying about the topography of Bains as a whole. What I would say is our challenge is carbon reduction. The transport sector is the only sector that has not shifted its reduction in carbon. Every other sector has. We have actually increasing our sector of carbon use. And that's not acceptable. That's not acceptable to my children or your children or anybody else's children and their future. We don't have time and we have to make changes. And some of those changes are going to be problematic and some of those changes are going to be hard. But if we don't make those changes, I don't see them having a future. So if we do have to get on an electric bicycle or an e-scooter, and we can make those connections and we can consider our journeys, that really is going to give them a fighting chance for that future. I'm sure you know that our sort of carbon levels have now gone over the 400 level. I can't, the RPI or whatever it is, I'm not very good at the science. But you know, we're way above the 350 level that was considered safe, and that has been around for most of human history. So we are all going to have to think differently about how we do things and what that looks like. The livable neighbourhoods is just a tiny part of that strategy. I'm calling it a packet full of measures that we're going to have to bring in to think about what our journeys can look like. And as Chris has said, it's not about everybody having to get out of their car. What we recognise is that some people will still have to use cars. What those cars look like, be they electric, they might even be hydrogen. There has to be a shift in what that looks like. But we all need to change the space, I think, of the road where the vehicle, the large vehicle, takes pride and takes place, to accept that actually that road space should be for all kinds of users, be them walking, cycling or vehicles. And for 40 years, the vehicle has taken absolute dominance of that space.
Yeah, I would just also add the point we touched on very quickly, public transport. We are consulting a very specific set of documents. That's why the reference is around livable neighbours rather than the wider links. It's a fair comment about the need to reference those links, and was one we have picked up, and we will make sure that the links to the strategy documents for public transport are seen as sister documents within the hierarchy of our policies.
Thank you. We're running slightly over. Is it short and sharp?
Very short, very short. So far as the Cam Valley contribution to the pollution in Bath, I think the major thing has already been done, and that is the provision of the park and ride. It's a pity that the east of the city is not convinced of the benefit of this, but as far as we're concerned, I think that's really very good.
Thank you. Right, thank you very much, Joanna and Chris and Jessica. That's much appreciated. And just to reiterate, the consultation response has been extended to the 18th of October. And I think one point that, although you didn't have time to go into this in much detail, but I think is really relevant to the Cam Valley, is electric vehicles. Perhaps that's for another day.
Can I just pick up on the east of Bath? So one of the measures that we are in our packet full of measures is we're undertaking a consultation at the moment for something called the Wiltshire Whippet, which essentially is a link and ride service. So what has been shown about park and rides is that if you create park and rides, they can actually create more traffic. They don't create less. And going back to, yeah, I know it looks, you're nodding your head, but I know that Chris Major can back me up with some data on this, but there's been a whole load of study by Graham Parkhurst, who's a professor at UE on this. So there is a lot of evidence on this. But however, what we recognise is there needs to be a better link between Wiltshire and Baines. So for instance, 42% of all car journeys into Bath from Wiltshire are to the RUH. So that's a significant number of people coming into the city to use our hospital. So how do we make some of those journeys in a better way? There is not a site on the east of Bath. There was never going to be a site on the east of Bath for all kinds of reasons. It's on a floodplain. Highways England wasn't going to give it access. There's a whole load of reasons that aren't even to do with people waving banners saying they don't want cars there. So going back to this Wiltshire Whippet, what we're looking at is how we create what's called link and ride, which are little pockets of cars along a route, literally from Bath to Chippenham, where people can then pick up a fast bus that will come into Bath, thereby making even a less of a journey and building up the bus infrastructure, because that's what is our problem. Going back to what the question was about not having a good bus service. What park and rides on the whole do is they break that cycle of a bus service and they remove people ever wanting to use them. So what we're trying to do is create a new system where you have a bus service that starts further out, that you can get onto quicker and that moves quickly. And that's the piece of work that we're working on at the moment.
So lots of little park and rides.
Essentially, yeah. So you don't have to drive so far to your bus journey. Or you could cycle or use an e-scooter to get to that bus.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Joanna. That's much appreciated.
Can I add one final comment in about access to e-bikes, for example? And Chris mentioned car clubs earlier, car share, as it were. And the sharing of vehicles is something that is a really important model for us going forwards. So that access to electric bikes, for example, isn't about each individual household having to spend £1,000 buying a bike themselves and maintaining it and storing it, because as we know, there's quite limited space within our houses to store these items as well. But when we have the on-street shared model where the maintenance is taken out of the hands of the individual, it's done by professionals, rebalancing is done by the operators, but people can turn up and predictably know that there is these small micro-mobility vehicles that will assist them for a short journey as and when they need it, and then they can leave it at the other end knowing that somebody else will manage it from there. And that allows what a term that I'd like to refer to as flexible mobility, whereby people aren't being told you have to give up a car and never drive again, you must cycle. It's a matter of choosing the right mode for that journey. And then you don't have to cycle every day on every journey. You can choose when driving a car is appropriate. You can choose when taking a scooter is appropriate, taking a walk or an electric bike as is appropriate for the length of journey, the purpose of the journey that it is that you're going on. And the more that we are working with these companies that want to come into the city and actually provide something for people, the more we give people choice to truly make informed decisions themselves.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Jessica. And again, thanks to Joanna, Chris and Jessica for that section. Rather timely segue, rural transport issues. Dave Orme is to give a brief update.
And I won't take the 10 minutes allocated, John, because it's a very quick update that's required. I'd just like it noted in the minutes that over a year ago, the forum agreed that if Plains was going to retain the Summer Valley and Chew Valley transport strategies that it had at that point as credible, live and available documents, then there really ought to be a similar strategy document for the Cam Valley. Now, here we are a year on, and there is no strategy for the Cam Valley yet. I accept absolutely that the COVID pandemic has upset issues, but at the moment we sit here today and regarding that strategic statement for the whole of the Cam Valley going forward, we are still none the wiser. I find that exceedingly uncomfortable because I can't tell my parishioners what the future looks like. I'll just leave it at that at the moment, and we'll see what happens going forward. But we've made little progress in the past year, sadly.
Thank you very much, Dave. Just to check in, any questions for Dave? Double check. No.
Chair, can I perhaps say a word? We have another big study going on, funded by WECA, as the Wiltshire Rapid that Joe has well described, which is taking a holistic view of the traffic needs, the highways needs within Baines. And it includes key corridors emanating out from the city and into the city. So we hope that there'll be some useful recommendations come in from that. So there've been a lot of studies undertaken recently. This hopefully will tie them together, and I think that will give our lead towards the individual strategies that Dave has been talking about to affect the rural areas more.
Thank you very much, Neil.
Consultation is shortly coming out within the next few weeks on that.
Thank you. Jenny, you're on mute.
Can you unmute me? Oh, thank you.
No.
Could I ask Joanna and Neil what the plans are for the bridge, the Cleveland Bridge, whether it will be reopened to huge traffic? Because that has made a big difference to people living on London Road and Bathwick and so on.
Okay, so we were awarded a £3.6 million grant to fix Cleveland Bridge, and we have to fix Cleveland Bridge. The problem with Cleveland Bridge is it sits on what's called the PRN, the Primary Route Network, and legally we are have to keep the primary road network in place, and we can't change that. Okay, so Cleveland Bridge unfortunately sits on that primary road network, and however we want to get out of it, we can't. In 2012, we tried to do that, and Wiltshire took us to court, and we were forced to undo what we had done. So we know that whatever happens with Cleveland Bridge, we have to fix it, and we need to look at other solutions. So Neil and I both sit on something called the Western Gateway, and that's called the Sub-Regional Transport Board. The sub-regional transport, there are several of them. So there's something called the Peninsula, which is basically Devon and Cornwall and most of Somerset. We sit in something called the Western Gateway, which sits from the Dorset coast all the way up to the top of South Gloucester and across from Wiltshire to North Somerset, essentially. So we have to look at strategic routes. And what has happened is that Wiltshire has, for many years, recognised that politically it didn't want to upgrade the A350 because it too was taken to court by its own residents on this. So they brought in Highways England and the government at a very top level to say strategically, what do we need to do? And they have now put in a study on the strategic network to basically upgrade the A350. And once that is in place, unfortunately that will take a few years, then we won't have to then be the PRN, and we can hopefully then take that route off the Cleveland Bridge. But in the very short term, we have to fix the bridge, we have to maintain the PRN, and we have to deal with it in the best way possible. So that's another reason why the clean air zone is really important. So the clean air zone is one of the reasons we can charge large vehicles who are non-compliant £100 a day. So those things in combination of where we are working, we are also looking at our legal position to see if we can take that further, but it's unlikely because of how complicated and how legalized the highways are. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. Yes, that's very helpful. I understand. Thank you.
Okay.
Very clear.
It is a very complicated piece of work.
It is. Thank you very much, Joanna. Thank you. Right, moving on to Renewal Vision and Climate Emergency. Jane.
Hi, everybody. Good to see
Hi.
you. I think it was the beginning of this year that Sarah Warren and I came round all the community forums to talk to you about the Council's response to the Climate Emergency Declaration. So this is, I'm just going to do a bit of an update on our climate emergency work, just briefly, and then talk to you about this new piece of work that I'm leading on for the Council called our Renewal Vision, because it's very important to how we deliver on the climate emergency. So we were all guns blazing at the beginning of the year in terms of plans for tackling the climate emergency, but we, like everyone, we were obviously when COVID hit, that did have an impact on some of the things that we were doing, not least the fact that some of my team had to go and work on some other things when we were at the height of the crisis. So it has had a slowdown on the things that we were planning to do, but I'm very pleased to be able to tell you that nonetheless, over the last 6 months, we have managed to really move forward in terms of key services aligning what they do with the climate emergency and the big target in that, which is to make Bath North East Somerset net zero carbon by 2030. I won't repeat what my transport colleagues have just told you about, because clearly that's a huge area where we've got a number of projects in play that they have been talking to you about. Similarly, our planning policy team have set up a process to do a partial review of all the local plan policies in order to help us to better deliver on the climate emergencies, to get those policies better aligned, so that we're really able to make the right decisions as planning applications come forward that are in line with that big carbon reduction target. So that'll be coming out for public consultation in the new year, I believe. It will take a year or two for that to happen, but it's much quicker than having to wait for a whole new local plan. So that's as fast as we can go on aligning planning policy. My colleagues in the housing department have also put a lot of effort into revamping the Energy at Home advice service that they run for all residents in Bath and North East Somerset to access, that primarily gives advice around what people can do around fuel poverty. But they've built in some more advice across the range in terms of energy and in people's homes and what they can do, and that includes advice on the government's new scheme that was launched at the beginning of this month for green homes grants, which anyone is eligible for. People on lower incomes are eligible for more to make their homes more energy efficient, and I think up to about 10,000. Those who are better off will be able to claim up to 5,000 if they've got things they want to do in their homes and contribute to the cost themselves. So do go to the Energy at Home advice line or direct your parishioners to to it if they need help this winter with energy efficiency, which of course will also help to reduce the carbon emissions of their home. My team have been busy getting some pieces of work commissioned that will help us to plan further and to help us to work out how we can make things happen in our district on key areas of our action plan, particularly how we can reach much bigger scale, because what we know from the study that we did last year is that to help people across our district and all the different organisations contribute towards us achieving that big 2030 net zero carbon target, we've got some big numbers of things we know we have to achieve. For example, 65,000 homes will need to be made much more energy efficient in the next 10 years. We know we're going to need 310 megawatts of new renewable energy across the district. How do we make that happen? How do we facilitate that? And there are many more numbers like that. So the studies that I've just commissioned through my team one is looking at that 310 megawatt renewable energy target, and the questions that we've asked these financial consultants that we've brought in is, what's the investment needed to deliver that, and is there an opportunity for the council to invest and to switch some of our capital investment to renewable energy in order to help to stimulate the market in Bath and North East Somerset? Is that the right thing for us to do financially? Another question that we're asking is, would it be better for us to go into a joint venture with one of our local community energy organisations in order to deliver more projects on the ground? And then the third and fourth questions are to do with, how do you bring more money in to finance big renewable energy projects? So looking at the private sector for finance, but also actually whether we should be looking at issuing green municipal bonds in Bath and North East Somerset to fund some of this work, because whilst we've got serious pockets of deprivation, we also have some very well-off people in our district who've got large pension pots or big savings in ISAs, and that money doesn't benefit the local community at all. But if just a percentage of that could be invested in a local green bond, then it might be that we could use, well, we would be able to use that to fund some of these things that we need to do to get the infrastructure in around renewable energy, around retrofitting homes, and so on. So that's a piece of work that we'll report in the new year that will help us to develop our plans in partnership with others. And then the second piece of work that we've commissioned is around this idea of a green recovery. And I don't know if any of you've picked up in the news the fact that there are lots of people saying that what the government needs to do to help the economy recover post-COVID is to look at all of those things that we need to do to deliver on the climate emergency, particularly things like home energy retrofitting, and that there are lots and lots of jobs to be had if we could get a scheme going that would really enable lots of people to get this work done on their homes in an affordable way. And that would create jobs much more quickly than some of the big infrastructure projects that central government tends to go for in this situation. The governor of the Bank of England has said that, it's not just me. So lots of figures have been bandied about how many new jobs could be created through those green measures. And what we've asked the consultants to do is to say, okay, so we know we've got to retrofit 65,000 homes in Baines, and we know we've got to deliver 310 megawatts of renewable energy. And we know that nationally, studies have shown that that's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of new jobs that could come out of that kind of action. What we want to know is, how many jobs could that create in Bath, North East Somerset if we did the right things to get that moving at scale in our area, so that people can get some more tangible feel for what a green recovery actually means for our area and what the economic and social benefits of those actions are. So that study we should get by the end of this year, and that will also, that study, the people doing that are also going to review our carbon footprint of the whole district and update it for us and see where it's been going up and down, and hopefully more down, and they'll review the trajectory, in other words, the numbers on some of those measures in terms of what we need to do between now and 2030. We'll have a review of that. So that's all the good stuff that's been happening on the climate emergency, despite the delay that we had. And then you probably noticed that in July, the council also declared an ecological emergency, which is, for me, the other side of the coin. You can't really separate the ecological and the climate emergency. The causes are often the same, and some of the solutions are the same. Soil carbon sequestration, for example, is one of those. So I'm strategically, I'm developing the action plan for that with colleagues from the ecology team. So we'll be reporting on that soon in terms of what is the action plan for delivering on that commitment that the council has made. But I think perhaps the most important thing that has happened since the COVID crisis started is that the council has set up, this is the cabinet and the new chief executive, something called our renewal programme, which has got several work streams within it about how do we recover from COVID. And one of those work streams I'm leading on, and it's called the Renewal Vision. And what's important about this is that what the crisis has shown us is how weak our economy is in Bath and North East Somerset because of our dependence on tourism and retail. And it's also shown up nationally the weakness of some of the long supply chains that we have. And I think there's a lot of interest now and thinking in how do we shorten those supply chains and how do we make our local economy more resilient? How do we make it stronger? How do we make it more diverse? And the consensus is that the green recovery is the way to do that, and that this action that we need to take on the climate emergency needs to be at the heart of how we recover our economy in Bath and North East Somerset. However, we don't know exactly how to do all of that, and that the process that I've been charged with is to have a conversation with as much of the community as we possibly can on how they feel the future needs to look in terms of coming out of COVID and the impact that that's had on their local community, and how the green recovery could help them and what that might look like. So I've got consultants working on that as well, and they've been having lots of conversations with, they've interviewed about 50 different people so far across the community, and from all different sectors. And there is some consensus emerging and some interesting ideas that are starting to resonate with lots of different people. And what we want to do next, and we'll be doing in the sort of second phase, is consulting on some of those thoughts and ideas and getting more contributions from across the community. That's why I'm here to talk to you today. I'll be going to all the other community forums and parish liaison, and then we're developing a programme of public engagement around what people would like the vision to be and how they can contribute to that vision for the future in late November. So there'll be more opportunities for you to engage. What I'd like to do is just, if I've got time, is to just tell you about some of the kind of stories that we've been creating about what the future could look like. Not for us to have a discussion about today because we haven't got time, but just to give you a flavour of the sort of things that we're thinking about, because I would really like to hear from any of you who really are interested and who would like to engage in more of a conversation, and then I'll work with you to set up something for if you want to have a more in-depth conversation with me and members of my team about it. So the questions, that the stories that we've been developing that look to the future are around how do we develop tourism into the future, given its inherent lack of sustainability at the minute because of the huge dependence on international tourism, which I think is, well, which everyone thinks is going to change fundamentally. So how do we create a low carbon tourism offer for Bath and North East Somerset? And there's some really interesting thinking that's been coming out around it not just being about Bath and the heritage city anymore, but being about the whole area, and how we can work together as a whole district on increasing people's stay in the district, so that they don't just go to Bath, but they maybe they take in the Chew Valley or beautiful places in the Cam Valley and so on. So there's some thinking around that it would be good to get your thoughts on, about how we could make tourism more sustainable, lower carbon, and how it could help to support the development of local supply chains, like, for example, local food, which used to be something that we celebrated. I remember we used to have a scheme called the Bath Breakfast when I first arrived here. It was all about hoteliers and B&Bs sourcing their food from local farms, and we need to look at that sort of thing, because that's much more sustainable and reduces carbon emissions. We're also looking at how can we get fairer financing so that we can get the investment that we need in a healthier, greener future. So that piece of work that I've got commissioned is about that. So it'd be good to have any ideas you've got around community investment and that kind of thing. And then the idea that's starting to get the most traction with the people that we've been talking to so far, which I think might be of interest to you, is about how do we make our economy work better at the local level, and that means at the parish level, at the village level. There's been a lot of talk since COVID about people working from home more, about how do you that's good behaviour in the sense that where people can do that, that means that they're reducing their carbon emissions and taking a lot of commuting travel off the roads. How can we build on that? And there's some ideas that have been developed around this about that could be enabled through having better local hubs where people could go to work in their local villages for all sorts of different employers without having to go any further than 15, 10, 20 minutes down the road. So those are some of the ideas that we're thinking about. But really, I think that the question I have for people representing the different parishes as you do is, are you having this kind of conversation in your parish, and can we help you with that? And what are your thoughts on how you want to see your high street, your village recover and do that in a green way? So during November, as I say, there will be more opportunities. We'll be running a series of webinars. We'll be running a series of discussions online around some of these ideas, but we'd like to hear your ideas so that we can feed those in. And in particular, there's an event that we've booked with the Centre for Sustainable Energy, who some of you I think will know, who are the real experts on this. They have developed a workshop for parish councils on how to develop your response to the climate emergency and develop local action plans. It's we booked it for Baines parish councils on the 26th of November. It's from 10 till 4. It's an online workshop with a break in the middle of the day, and it includes basically exercises and tools in how to plan at parish level to respond to the climate and ecological emergency, and it includes within that some future vision work that you might find really useful. So I wanted to just leave you with that, and as I say, I've given you a lot of information. If you've got thoughts you'd like to share with me around your vision from your village, or people that you have that kind of conversation with, then do let me know, and we'll feed that into the process that we're running here, because this isn't about us going out there and saying, here's our vision, what do you think of it? It's about saying, we've got these issues in terms of how we recover and grow a stronger economy out of the current situation we find ourselves in. How do we learn from some of the behaviour change that's happened during COVID, as Chris Major was talking about, and how do we move into the future in a way that's going to ensure that we deliver net zero carbon 2030 for Bath and North East Somerset, building on all the great work, including the stuff that you're already doing. So I'll finish there.
Jane, thank you very much. And thank you for that potted resume. Can I just leave one question with you? You said you'll be going out for further consultations.
Yeah.
How will those consultations be undertaken, or is that yet to be decided?
It is yet to be decided, which means that if you've got a great idea about how that could happen in your parish or your area, then let me know. We're working with a group of consultants. My next meeting is tomorrow. We've picked the final week of November to have a series of events that will engage more. So we're thinking about a series of webinars on some of those different subjects that I mentioned. We've bought something called DLib, which is an online platform for kind of what's the word, moderated discussions within the community, so that we can put a topic up or a question, and we'll notify people how long it might be open for a week. We might do this in the run up to that final week in November about a particular topic, so that people in the community can all contribute their ideas and actually talk to each other online. So things like that is what we're thinking about. But if you've got any other, because obviously it's going to have to be online, unfortunately. But we did do a session with we did a session for community groups last week in the evening on Zoom, and we used a slightly scary bit of technology within Zoom that's called Breakout Groups, where we'd organised all of the people and we pushed them into these different groups, and they had 20 minutes to have a conversation, and it worked really, really well. I was really surprised. People had really good conversations. They were able to contribute because they were in a very small group and didn't feel they were on display to the whole world kind of thing. So so any ideas that you've got, let me know.
Thank you very much, Jane. I won't take Q&As on this because it will be going out to consultation. That's the place for the interaction. I'd like to thank Jane for her time. Very interesting indeed. Moving on, village agents and Chris. Hello, Chris. I'm not sure on your role. Is it Chief Executive or Senior Director or just Head Bod?
Yes, I'm Executive Director.
Executive Director of what?
Whatever that means. It's a made-up job role, really. So thanks, John. So I know quite a few of you around the room. Oh, hello, Dave. And Dave. And Matt. So we run a small project. Well, actually, it's been going for a very long time. It's been going for about 12, 13 years now, called Village Agents in the Chew Valley. Some of you probably will have come across them. We've drifted towards Dave Orm's area. So we were now in sort of Timsbury as well. But it's a very light touch sort of signposting service, predominantly working in the past with self-referral, so people referring themselves through, but more recently, in the last couple of years, it's been more closely linked with GPs and the GP surgeries, and that's why we're working out in Timsbury, because we are now working with St Mary's out in Timsbury, which has been really successful. We've then also got a separate strand within that, which is all of the primary care networks in Bath, North East Somerset now have a role in them called a social prescribing link worker. Social prescribing link worker is someone who is absolutely embedded within the GP surgeries and within the primary care networks. And their role really is to work with GPs to pick up some of those clients or patients who perhaps don't need sort of full-on medical intervention, medical treatment, but they might need support in, some work around some mental health issues, or, they're lonely or they're isolated, or, there's another issue which actually is a non-medical issue. And in the past, GPs have been very good at sort of dealing with that, and actually it's taken quite a lot of time for them to deal with those sorts of things. But all the surgeries now have got these things called social prescribing link workers. We're running the social prescribing link worker over in our patch, which is called Three Valleys Healthcare, which actually probably does come across into your area, because it sort of technically includes Wellow. It goes as far as Wellow, but it also obviously includes the whole of Midsummer Norton, Radstock, goes up to Timsbury, Camerton, Shoshcombe, Peasdown. So it sort of touches on your area. But because of the role of the social prescribing link worker, we're actually able to offer really joined up service with the village agents. So the social prescribing link worker at that sort of the higher level, directly intervening with the GPs, and then they signpost to the village agents. So John's been aware of this for quite a while, and obviously Dave Dixon through the council been aware of what's been going on. And John started to pick my brain really when I heard about the trouble that you were having over in Freshford, the surgery over in Freshford, and couldn't quite believe the situation that you got over there with your being reliant on Somerset as your primary healthcare provider. But to cut a long story very short, we've had some discussions with John and with colleagues in the council and with Virgin Care, really to see if there is a way of, if you move across to your surgery, your main focus surgery becomes Combe Down surgery, whether there is a way of actually getting a village agent to operate in that sort of basically sort of everything south of Combe Down, so south of Foxcombe, Combe Down, which includes Freshford, Limply Stoke, Hinton Chart House, sort of touches onto Bathford, but it includes that sort of strip down. You do have a social prescribing link worker who's operating out of Combe Down surgery, part of that practice. They're operating through DHI. We're working in partnership with DHI, so it's quite a sort of a seamless operation. So this was just really to see whether there was any traction within that fairly narrow sort of corridor. And Robert, it might come out as far as English Combe. I'm never quite sure how the land lies down that way, and Matt down towards English Combe. I'm never quite sure where English Combe is a bit of a grey area, really, isn't it? Where it all fits in, but it's that sort of idea is really, are you up for having a village agent? We've identified some funding that we could sort of maneuver into that role, but it was just to see whether you had a sort of appetite for it in your patch, really, John. Is that okay?
Absolutely, it is. I mean, it's understanding the role of the village agents and the benefit to the community, which, from speaking to the village agents themselves, is actually quite significant. Because being in the rural, certainly in Freshford, we have quite a few cases where people are in need of additional services. I noticed, it came to my attention because people were actually using the Freshford surgery to overcome loneliness, to overcome other mental issues as well. That's more prevalent in the elderly. And it seemed that there was a whole aspect of, to be blunt, social services that these people needed, the doctors needed to protect them. And then I was looking further into the kind of health provision within our community, because Freshford surgery isn't just Freshford. It's Freshford, simply Stoke. It's essentially Midford, to a degree, believe it or not, Wellow. It's quite a wide area. Yeah. And I also understand the surgery did have some South Stoke residents using Freshford as well. So it's basically this whole gamut.
Yeah, yeah. And
it fell down a hole. Baines just did not see us. I'm not saying deliberately, but all the plans had a big hole in it here because we were being served by Somerset. Somerset weren't serving us. Just to give you a reason, this is the point that gave me the big driver. It was brought to my attention that in several of the villages around who were being served by Beckington practice, should you have a stroke, you weren't taken to St. Martin's up in Odd Down or the RUH. You were taken to Shepton Mallet. Now, those of you who know the area will know, actually, that's a hell of a distance. And that may well affect more areas than just those villages I mentioned, because it's to do with the funding area. If we can bring village agents into our group of villages, we can overcome an awful lot of these issues.
I think the other thing, John, about when we've brought village agents in as well, is that actually that because they can identify where gaps are, then they can almost sort of act as sort of community development workers as well. I don't want to big them up too much, but you know, if one of the things that is apparent, for example, is that, you know, there's a lot of 70-year-old men who are bored witless and want to know what to do, well then, you know, actually what we've done in the past, we've set up a Men in Sheds project, and there's been some really good evidence of that actually, you know, how that actually creates some fairly good health outcomes. So it's those sorts of other things that we can pull in on the back of this. And I know that's an example, one of the examples, but there are, but unless you know that those things exist, you can't react to them. So I think this was really kind of just a very, you know, supposed to be a very quick introduction to that, and appreciate, you know, there's a number of you that will know what the service we already provide is, but there's also some others where, you know, we can share some more information with you, and some of the sort of other projects that have come off the back of that. That, I think, that was really the sort of purpose of tonight's little introduction, John, was it?
Absolutely. It's sort of, to coin a phrase, a taster.
Yeah. And I think the other thing, because we're working with DHI on the social prescribing link worker, because we're already doing village agent kind of stuff, and John, you mentioned some very confusing boundaries, and actually, as a citizen, as a receiver of these services, actually you don't really need to know where the boundaries of these things are. Actually, you just want something delivered. You want to know where things are. You know, you don't need to know where the boundaries are. So the fact that we've got some fairly soft boundaries, and we understand that actually acts in your advantage as well, particularly down in your neck of the woods as well, you know, where things are either in Wiltshire or Somerset or Baines.
Well, absolutely.
Or none, as it would appear, John.
Or none. I mean, certainly in our area, I think there's a message to give out which surprised me when I learnt this, which will apply to quite a number of other villages around. Apparently, Baines and Wiltshire health services are now I use this word badly, but co-joined. They're working together. So our primary care network is now put together and defined regardless of county boundary.
With Wiltshire it is, but
sorry, what did I not say? Wiltshire?
No, you did, but with Somerset is a separate thing. This was what was so bizarre about your situation.
Yeah.
So there is now the Baines, Bath, North East Somerset, Swindon and Wiltshire CCG, Clinical Commissioning Group, is now a single entity.
Yeah.
So Wiltshire's fine. It's the Somerset bit that's just really odd.
Yeah, won't go down that route now. Stories galore. Does anyone have any questions for Chris?
That's very good.
No?
No, excellent.
Is how you like it.
Oh,
Des. No. Hi, Des. How are you?
Hi, John. Yeah, sorry I was late. Yes, I mean, could you just briefly give me an idea of who these village agents are? How are they recruited? How do they fit in?
Yeah, so basically, so basically the way we try and have a fairly distinct geography. So we're recruiting for a geography. That's the first thing. And so therefore, when we advertise for the post, it is very clearly for a specific geography, and somewhat, you know, we make it as under equal ops rules, as equal ops as we can, but actually we try and be really clear about the geography. By and large, they're only employed for about 10 hours a week, and they work completely flexibly. So it's very much around what their working arrangements are. They're not an emergency service. That's the other important thing. So, you know, they will, you know, if it is an emergency, there are other people who deal with emergencies. This is absolutely around, you know, the availability is X, Y, Z. Pre-COVID, they would have attended coffee mornings. They would have gone to, you know, clinics that were going on. They would have got a real feel for what was happening in the local area, and they would have attended things which were below the radar. This is why since COVID, because we're not doing any home visits, we rely much more on referrals through from medical practitioners, social workers, GPs, etc. So they will get referrals, and again, depending on what presents, which can range from literally one phone call referring through to one other agency. We have been working with people for many years, you know, who are just sort of move in and out. But I suppose the underlying purpose of what we're trying to do, and this was the sort of the founding principle, is we're trying to keep people in their homes for as long as we can. I mean, if you want to distill it down to something, that is what it is. And that's anyone from the age of 18 upwards as well. This isn't a service just for older people. It's from anyone over the age of 18. So it can be a whole raft of different issues. And again, depending on the complexity of the thing, it kind of depends on how long we're dealing with them and how we deal with them. But the thing about the village agent is that actually their role is to signpost to others to do the activity. So there's a few things that they will do, but by and large, it will be others who do the activity or who do the action. So you're signposting through to other people to do it, because that's the other thing, is actually the services that we do have in Baines are so wide and so varied and so in depth. Actually, there will always be someone who can do it. It's just you as a citizen may not know who that person is. So it is, you know, if you might have heard the phrase signposting, but that's really very much what it is. But it's signposting from a basis of knowing what the local geography is. So it'd be like if someone, you know, from Bristol came and told John that he needed, you know, oh look, there's a train line down there, you can go everywhere on the train. You know, clearly that's irrelevant, you know, for what John needs down in Freshford. Whereas actually someone who lives in the area, knows the area locally, will know there are no buses, you know, on a Thursday, so you don't signpost for that. So do you see what I mean? So you've got a bit of local knowledge, but it is signposting through to others to do. Is that okay, Des?
You're on mute.
I was just wondering how you recruit these people. How do you get volunteers or?
Oh no, they're sorry. Oh right, sorry, they're paid.
Ah.
Oh sorry, I do apologise. I absolutely sorry.
Yeah,
I should have said that. They're paid. It's a paid role.
Right.
So yeah, and yes, I mean it's a, you know, they're an employee, so it's not a volunteer role. This is a paid role. Sorry. Yes. And yeah, we just, you know, we recruit on a normal basis. So we would, you know, find out what the best, you know, we'd find some local knowledge about what the best place to recruit was, put adverts in parish magazines or, you know, local papers, etc. Quite used to working down here. We have the Chew Valley Gazette, which is a monthly newsletter, which has great readership and traction, but actually, you know, it moves at a glacial speed, so we have to work on that basis. I'm sure we're probably slightly different down there, but yeah, we would recruit, and it is a paid role.
So the employer is Baines, is it?
No, it's West of England Rural Network. Sorry, that's our organisation. Yeah, so we employ them, and I've got at the moment I'm employing, because we work in North Somerset as well as Baines. I think I'm up to about 11 village agents at the moment, 12 village agents.
Right.
So you know, that's the bulk of my staff. They all work from home as well. They're all home workers, as in fact obviously we all are now anyway, but they were always home workers. So
okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah, fine, thank you.
Yeah, okay. And any other questions? No? Okay. I'm not sure which route to take this conversation down, but whether to throw one or two out there. I mean, a key thing is we've given a taster here. The project manager I spoke to and talked through all the services in detail, would say signposting here is much more than giving other people's details. It's actually, the way she explained it to me was organizing, satisfying the social need. So it's not the signposting that we received, certainly in Freshford, Livable, Stoke during COVID-19, where one centre was literally giving you a phone number to ring to go elsewhere. This is a hands-on role, and it's giving the level of care. That's unfair level of care, but a layer of care services that we are currently missing in our community. They do exist elsewhere in Baines. They do exist elsewhere in Somerset. The reason Freshford and Livable, Stoke, etc., haven't been receiving this is Somerset refused to pay for those services outside of their boundary, and that's the underlying driver to me requesting Chris to come and give this speech, this talk, so we can start to drive forwards, plugging the gap that exists in this area of parishes just to the south of Bath and within Wiltshire. Okay. Is that fair, Chris?
I'm not sure about the Wiltshire bit. That's the only thing, because like in the same basis that we're not allowed to operate in the Somerset people. But I think there are equivalent in Wiltshire, because
it's within the Minerva.
Yeah. No, don't worry. We can resolve that. That's a fairly.
Sorry, I'm very, very blasé. I regard Freshford, Lytton, and Peastoke as one community, and all services should be provided within us. And they're the conversations I've been having with Baines on this, and certainly Joe Scannell is right behind that, and that's where the funding comes from. Sorry, I'm a bit bullish on that point. I think Limpy Stoke would agree with me there. Yeah, Joe's nodding. No, sorry, I said Joe. To apologise. On mute.
I'm Nikki Bolton.
Yes. I realised my mistake. Your husband's name is up. That's why you just put your head in your hand while I do. Okay. If there aren't any other questions, so say thank you very much, Chris.
I mean, what we'll do, depending on how it goes with Dave at the council, we will move things along, and then we will let you know and report back to you. And again, one of the things the village agent would do is they would ask to come to the parish council meetings at least once to introduce themselves. That's the fairly standard sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that on a local level, you'll get to meet them and get to hear what's going on. Is that all right?
Absolutely, thank you. I'll ask one more question, if I may, because if any of us go back to our parish councils, everyone is going to say that's fantastic. What does it cost? Is that something that we would have to work out as time goes by, or is it fully funded by Baines?
That would be a question that would be above my. That's an ecumenical matter. I see Dave in the bottom corner of my screen just sort of nodding his head. John, I think the finances of it, but by and large, we will try and make sure the finances are covered. If it goes really well and you decide you want additional services, then I think we would then come back to the parish council. We've done that elsewhere. Parish councils have subscribed for additional services, but you know that would be to start the thing off, to start the thing rolling. I think we've identified some funding that we would be able to use for this small role. Is that right, Dave? Sorry, I don't want to put you on the spot. Yeah, Dave's nodding his head. So at this stage, this is more about getting you guys engaged.
So this is the need, because we've got funding coming through.
Have you got a need? Can you get engaged with the process? Can we get this rolled out? Is this something you would support? And I think it sounds like this is in the affirmative, that yes, you do want this.
Well, certainly I do. I mean, I think that Nikki, I hope you would agree.
Okay.
Yeah, a muted I do.
Very good.
Des, you're in our group of parish councils here.
Yeah.
That's three.
I'll wait to see developments with interest.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, that's definitely. I'm not sure if you got other parish councils in this specific enclave within the Cam Valley. No. Okay. Thank you very much, Chris.
Is that okay?
That's fantastic. Thank you. And I think from all of us in the associated parishes, you've got a yes.
Yes, thank you.
Cool. Excellent. Well, I look forward to meeting you at some point in real life, possibly.
Sometime.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Right. The final session was going to be local care in the community, which is the reason I put this on the agenda was I wasn't sure if there would be a real discussion arising out of Chris's presentation or not. And further to that, Freshford has lost its surgery, which affects a number of us within the Cam Valley. And it's whether other communities, to pull on the experiences of other communities who have surgeries within their villages, and to see if there was the basis or a need for a conversation on that, because there was a chance that Chris's presentation was going to engender a fair amount of engagement. We had a blank yes. We basically, yep, fine. What's the issue? Next, let's do it. Are there any community care issues that anyone wishes to raise? There's possibility of being linked with the previous subjects. No, that's fine. I seem to have flown a kite in a windless area. That's fine. I don't propose to go on. Is there any other business that anyone wishes to raise? No, we all want our tea.
Chair, could I just say something for a minute?
Please do, Neil.
Thank you. Just to thank you very much for your diligence in this role over the last, couple of years now? And
it's 2.5 years since you dropped me in it, Neil.
And thanks very much for agreeing to do it again. It's very useful to have somebody thoughtful in the way that you are, and I think
that's very kind.
Achieved, and no doubt a lot more we achieved. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Neil. That's much appreciated. Nikki.
Yeah, I think that you and I probably need to speak separately from this, just work out how Limpley State Parish Council fits in, because we're not Baines.
Absolutely. I've been talking to Anthony a fair bit, yeah, exactly. And it would be good to pull you into the fold. Yes, we'll talk offline.
Yeah, okay.
It's a shame it's a shame that the hot poll is no longer in existence, but there you go.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
Thank you. And anyone else with anything to raise? Des.
Yes, John. There was a comment about since the Preshford surgery closed, the people will be transferring to Coombe Down.
Yeah.
Is that a done deal? Is that definitely on the cards, or is it?
It's up to the patients. I can't say it's a done deal, yes or no. The recommendation from Bakington is that if people wish to change their surgery, then they recommend Coombe Down because of the closeness.
Yeah.
So what that does is overcome the problems that can arise when patients wish to switch surgeries. So there won't be any objection from Bakington for any of their patients joining Coombe Down.
Can I,
Vicky,
ask, how was that? I hadn't heard this at all. How new is this information?
It's part of the Freshford surgery closure notice that Bakington put out.
Okay. I'll put that out.
Which was very badly communicated.
Yeah, okay. Clearly. Thanks.
Yes, I was just interested because Coombe Down is my surgery and I didn't want it overwhelmed by hordes of people from Freshford. without
We're very nice people, I promise you.
I'm sure you are.
The more pressure that you can put on for that specific point, the more appreciative actually we would be. Because one of the other aspects, and this is a Freshford thing that we've got going, is we're trying to put pressure on Coombe Down to utilize the space that was put aside in Freshford for a new surgery.
Yeah.
Because this is one of the problems in Bath. As the population of Bath is expanding, there's incredible pressure being put on each of the surgeries. Now, we are in an incredibly fortunate position that there is a degree of funding available from the Fox Hill development for the local surgeries, local practices to expand their services. So we've got our hand in the air saying, we've got premises, we're just down the hill. What's the problem? And the more pressure that people can put on the practice, the better. I'm being totally parochial. Make no bones about that.
You want to try ringing them up though? You can't get an answer.
Letters work.
Yeah.
Thank you. I do apologise for a parochial response there. And any other questions? AOB from anyone? No? Thank you very much for attending. I'm asking for consideration to be given, I mentioned at the start, for any issues that run through your local communities. And if we can pick up those issues in advance of a Cam Valley Forum, then we can build up the basis of a meeting, engaging others, other areas, getting people from Baines to address, getting the local community engaged, the way we did with the Breathe campaign and the climate emergency. If any of you were at those meetings, the Breathe campaign meeting in Preston was lively. Is that fair to say? I must admit, I enjoyed that meeting. And dates of further meetings will be dealt with by Mark, and they will be circulated. I'm going to duck that issue completely. Sorry, Mark.
No, that's fine, John. Yeah, you're absolutely right. We've got nothing yet in the diary. We are waiting to hear how the council wishes to do its consultation on its budget this year. So I think they're looking to do it in a slightly different way, where they're going to take some themes and do some webinars on that. So we will keep you informed of those webinars and any others that the council are doing. But obviously we will need to put some dates in the diary for either late this year or early next year for continuing the important issues that Cam Valley needs to raise. So we'll liaise with you on that and make sure that we get those dates that suit the parishes and suit, the topics.
Fantastic, Dave. Thank you very much. At the risk of talking on and on, I quite tend to say, let's finish the meeting slightly early. Having been ahead of time, we're now ahead of time. And I don't know about how many of you, but I'm dying for some tea. We got a fish and chip van in the village, so that's where I'm going.
Enjoy, John.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Bye now.
Bye bye. Bye everybody.